So welcome to the second webinar in the series by UNCG School of Education. This webinar is on the UNCG Learning Management System LMS Canvas, particularly Gradebook and SpeedGrader. As we near the finals for spring 2016, I thought it would be a good idea to look at grading tools in Canvas and show instructors how to use these tools more efficiently and effectively. If you do not choose to use the grade, you can turn this off as a tab in your navigation settings. If you do choose to use it, grades can serve as a communication tool between students and instructors and allows instructors to track the progress of students. The gradebook stores all the information about student progress in the course, measuring both letter grades and course outcomes. SpeedGrader, which we'll talk about at the end of this session, allows you to view and grade student assignment submissions in one place using a simple point of scale or complex rubric. So before we get started, please remember that Canvas as a company has extensive tutorials on their tool, including Gradebook and SpeedGrader. So to find these guys, you can search through the Canvas community, which is community.canvaslms.com. You can just search into this search box right here. Some guides, and I'll send you a link to these guides at the end of this session, are your full guides on Gradebook, specifically what are the grades in the gradebook, how do I use them. There's an instructor guide on SpeedGrader, a list of the full guides, what is SpeedGrader, and how do I use SpeedGrader. There's also a Canvas best practice guide that we in the SOE Instructional Technology has created. This guide covers many best practices in Canvas, including tips and tricks on Gradebook and SpeedGrader, as well as more, as you can see. So again, you'll get a page with all these links at the end of this session. So let's go into Canvas. I'm in a Canvas course. This is a training course, so there's no confidential information of students in here. So we'll start by looking at the Assignments tabs. If you wish for something in your course to be graded and go into your gradebook, it should be made as an assignment. So for example, you can create assignments such as quizzes that you hand them papers or a take-home quiz or anything like that in assignments, not as a quiz, and have it be no submission. So you can enter the grade manually in your grade book. So assignments can also be created for students to submit work online, or like I said, a manual input. It's probably best for you to mostly do the work through online so you can have it all in one place, and that's how you would be able to use SpeedGrader, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So creating an assignment group, so my groups here are discussions of reading, journals, group project, papers, quizzes, is how you weight the groups if you do that within your syllabus or your course. So once you have your assignment groups, however you break up your assignments, you can go into grades, and then you go to the gear on the far right and set group weights. So once you do this, you'll see your groups. You can click on this, and then you can set a weighted scale for your course. The only catch of this is that you'll have to have all of the assignments in your course, assignments within a group, the same point scale. So you'd have to have everything in journals worth 10 points, because you can see my 10 points with here. All your quizzes worth 100 points. You can have different points within the different groups, but not within the same group. So here, actually, I have a mistake. I have 20, 20, 1 point. This won't work if I'm trying to weight my groups. As long as you're not weighting, this doesn't matter at all. So are there any questions about weighting? Okay. So next we'll go to the different elements of Gradebook as an instructor. So your students will see a different view than you're seeing, which we'll see an image of that later. So this is just the instructor view of how the Gradebook works. Remember, there's no sensitive data in here. It's a training course. So you don't have to use Gradebook, and this is optional. So let's look at the basic layout of Gradebook. Gradebook columns up here at the top, they're based on your assignments, which we talked about. They're automatically created when you create and publish an assignment, quiz, or graded discussion. Basically anything that's graded within Canvas. Unpublished graded work will not show up in Gradebook until it's published. The total grades column is on the far right, as you can see over here, and then these are based on your assignment groups if you're using them. There's no way to turn them off, but if you're using a weighted grade, it will show the weights of your student totals within the groups. Like I said, there's no way to turn these off, so if you're not using a weighted group or anything, you can just ignore them. So you can change the way the students see their final grade and the total. You can switch to points. It automatically does it on a percentage system. So now if we go to the top of the column for each assignment, you have these options as well. So assignment details show grade statistics on an assignment. SpeedGrader will go over in a little bit, but it's your grading tool. You can message students who, which your options are students who haven't submitted the assignment yet, haven't been graded, scored less than a certain score, and scored more than a certain score. You can set a default grade, which is just giving everyone the same grade, and you can curve grades, where you will enter an average grade for the curved assignment. It will also show you a chart, and grade curving cannot be undone, so just be careful of this option. You can download all the submissions from an assignment, and you can also mute an assignment. The download submissions give you a zip file. So let's talk about muting assignments for a second. When you are grading student work in the gradebook through this view or in SpeedGrader, students will automatically see your grades and comments as you submit them. If you want to be able to edit and change a score as you go without your students seeing what you're doing, you can mute an assignment. This will hide the assignment from your students by giving them an icon that explains the assignment is in the process of being graded. It's especially important to mute quizzes that have essay questions that will be graded later. If you don't do this, it will show that they get no points for the essay until it's graded, which will show off the total of their percentage. Once you are done grading, you can unmute the assignment for the students to receive an automatic notification through their email that the grading of that assignment is complete. So when you click on mute assignment, you can see it will describe it, and then you click yes. So I'm not going to do that right now. Okay, so now let's go over the upper right of Gradebook. We've already went over it a little bit, but here you can see where you can view grading history, set group weights, which we already talked about, hide student names. This can be good for anonymous grading if you think that's something that's important to you. Arrange columns by due date. You can treat ungraded as 0, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. Show concluded enrollments and show a note column. You can also import a CSV file of assignments. You have to be careful of this because remember you're already working within your assignments tab. And you can also export this as a CSV file, which can be useful to keep your grades at the end of the semester for data keeping purposes. You can show all sections. You can show individual views of the student grades or work or gradebook if that's something you prefer. And this I button will take you into the keyboard shortcuts for Gradebook. So now let's talk about how Canvas treats ungraded assignment submissions. This is kind of a tricky thing about Canvas. So if you, by default, ungraded assignments are not included in any assignment total calculations. This means that when assignments are left as ungraded, this dash symbol, if you see this dash symbol anywhere in your gradebook in your course, they are treated as if they never happened. It means that they pretty much get full credit for that assignment that they did not turn in. There is an option that you saw, obviously called Treat Ungraded as 0, which so this is, though you could choose this option, it does not, it shows the instructor how things would look if all ungraded assignments were 0s. It does not stick when you leave the gradebook or affect what is being seen by the students. It's just a way for you to see who you might be giving a 0 to. It's therefore important to actually manually enter a 0 by clicking in here and clicking into 0 if you want the student to actually get a 0 for the assignment. The other option is you have the option of set a default grade. You could set the default grade as 0 and then start submitting, once they submit their papers, everyone will get a 0 until you fill in what people got. Really, I have found in my teaching the best way to solve this is just to manually enter the 0. So this is just kind of one of those things about Gradebook. So are there any questions about that, about the 0 part of Canvas? Okay, so now I'm going to show you a quick slideshow about different icons in Gradebook. So here is you can see how the different, if you set up an assignment to look like a percentage or a point, et cetera, how it looks. So over here is a percentage grade. If you do complete, incomplete, they'll see a check or an X mark. A letter grade, they'll see an A plus the point scale system because it has to work on the point scale as well. You'll see a points, obviously, if it's just a point system, and no submission is a dash, which we talked about, and a GPA scale shows up like that. So one thing is this excused assignment. This is a fairly new feature in Canvas. If you type in an EX, where you're normally putting in the grade, it will excuse an assignment. So it's like leaving the dash there if you wanted to have a record of that it's been excused. So next is the colors. The beige is a resubmitted assignment. The red is a late submission, and the gray lining is a dropped grade. So if you ever see these colors in your gradebook, that's what it means. The resubmitted means you already gave them a grade and they like resubmitted it if you want them to regrade it. So here are the different icons for the different assignments. The Q is a quiz submitted, not graded. So every time you see an icon, it means that they've submitted the work, but it hasn't been graded. So here is a quiz, here is a discussion, here is a URL, here is a text entry through the rich content editor in Canvas. Here is the file upload, and here is the media recording. And that's, again, how they all look like. Once you grade them, of course, the grade will actually show up instead of the icon for that. Here's what an assignment muted looks like. It's also the same symbol that your students will get on their gradebook once an assignment has been muted. Here's the student view of how it looks for Gradebook, if you ever wondered about that. Of course, they're not going to see other student data. It's confidential, and they'll see if this is that they've submitted work, but it hasn't been graded. This is that it's been graded. On the far right, they can see if there's been any comments. These little blue boxes are a rubric, which we'll talk about later. If you use weights, they'll see the weight over here on the right. If they want to click on the comments, they can click on the assignment, and they'll see the comments in the upper right. And if they click on View Feedback, they'll be able to see your Crocodoc submissions, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So next, let's talk about Turn It In a little bit. So Turn It In is the plagiarism tool that UNCG and Canvas uses. So you set up Turn It In within an assignment setup. So when you create an assignment, you'll see a box where you can click that says Turn It In or Plagiarism Report. So Turn It In is a plagiarism and originality detector that allows for annotation and pre-created notes to be pinned to areas of a student's document. The sources for the possible non-original content are listed so that the instructor can then decide if this is the student's own work and if proper citations have been used. So again, it creates a whole report. It accepts many different file types, and again, I have the whole list, but it does not accept PowerPoint and Apple page files. But it does create document files, PDFs, and text files. So here's what Turn It In looks like in your gradebook. So you'll see this little symbol here, like a little comment. It's the gray means the originality report has not been generated yet. The green means the originality report has returned a score. The color is based on the originality percentage score. And then you click on the little comment, and that, excuse me, I had to sneeze. You click on the comment box, and that's where you can generate the complete report. So now that we've gone over some of the gradebook stuff, I'm going to go back to this. Sorry, I just saw your question. So what is your question about excused assignments? You can type it into the chat box. So excused affects the final grade, I think, pretty much in the exact same way as if you left it as a dash. I think it's just something for you to visually be able to see. It just takes the assignment grade away. So it doesn't give them a 0. It just kind of takes it away from their total percentage. It just kind of makes it so that for that one student who you excused that it never happened. Does that answer your question? Okay. So now we're going to, like I said, I mean, you can just use the dash if you wanted. I think EX is just more like if you want a state of mind. So they kind of work in the same way. And I'll follow up on that in my training just to make sure I'm right about that, but I think that's right. So now we're going to talk about SpeedGrader. So SpeedGrader is if you're using the Canvas gradebook to grade student work, it's advised to use the SpeedGrader tool. SpeedGrader allows you to view and grade student assignment submissions in one place using a simple point scale or rubric. We'll briefly talk about the rubrics, and at the end, if there's questions about that, we can go over it more. SpeedGrader allows you to go through student work to comment and grade without having to download a zip file of multiple files. Canvas SpeedGrader accepts a variety of document formats and even URLs as assignment submissions, and they can show up in your SpeedGrader. Some document assignments can be marked up for feedback, and we'll talk about that with Crocodoc, and you can also provide feedback to your students with text or media comments. So to enter SpeedGrader, you saw it here at the top with this arrow. You can enter it there, or you can go to a particular student. You see here you have this where you can see comments, add a comment quickly, add a grade quickly, see the file, and see the rubric, or you could go into SpeedGrader. So here's the overall view of SpeedGrader. Once you're in SpeedGrader, you can go through the students alphabetically, or you can, and that's how it shows you here the list of students at the top. You can see here the different symbols. We'll go over those in a little bit. But here's my list of students. So if you want to go to the next student, you can click on here. But if you want to jump to someone up here, you can go there. So as you can see here with documents, you can use Crocodoc in order to annotate. So you can comment, draw, highlight, add text, and do a strikeout. And if you do this, your students should be able to see all the feedback that you give them on a paper, again, without having to download it and use track changes and all that. So it's a pretty nice feature. Over here on the right, you can mute an assignment if you haven't already done that. You can go to the settings, which just shows you how you can sort names. So if you didn't want to do it alphabetically, you can do it by date they submitted this assignment or the submission status. You can also hide student names in SpeedGrader. So again, another useful tool in case you wanted to do grading anonymously. So up here at the right, you can see submitted, when it was submitted. If it was late, it's going to give you a big message about that. Here's the file if you wanted to download it. You could throw in a quick grade, and if you do have a rubric, it's going to show up here at the bottom. So you can see for this assignment, I did add a rubric so people could see what it looks like. So if you click View Rubric, it's going to show you the full rubric, and if you did turn on the grading aspect of a rubric that you created within Canvas, you can just click on the different elements of the rubric and see the grade fills in automatically. So you can see here I just click, 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 and the grades fill in. You can also add individual comments to a certain part of a rubric. So here I'm picking the depth of analysis part of my rubric. I can add a comment just to that, and your students will be able to see that when they click on the final paper in Canvas. If you didn't want to use that, you could just enter a grade right here. Here it says, I just threw in this rubric as an example. It's a different grade than the actual grade of this, so you'd have to make sure they match. And then here you can attach a file. You can add a video or a media comment, and you can do speech recognition to add your comment. This would be an overall comment of the paper. So let's again just go over some other stuff in SpeedGrader. So assignment submitted, needed grading, you'd see a check. So sorry, assignment submitted, graded, you see a green check next to your student names. If it's a moderated assignment, which is an option you can now select on assignments that other people can help you grade your work, it would be good to use if you had a TA, etc. That's what that means. So that means it was graded by another grader. The orange one is an assignment submitted needs grading. So you couldn't see this on me, but if the submission was late, so you see it in big red writing, and you can see when it's submitted, and you can also see if your students looked at your comments after the grading. So if you add annotations or whatever, you can view when the student viewed the annotations. So here's with multiple submissions. This is being kind of buggy. So here's multiple submissions. It's you'll see here, you can click on this window right here, and you'll see it's January 6th, 11:39 late, and then you'll click on that, you'll see all the other files. And then here's multiple file submissions, and then it will always tell you if you're not on the most recent file, in case you're concerned you're looking at an older file that they submitted. So that's some stuff about SpeedGrader. You can see here SpeedGrader creates a separate tab, so you can go back into your gradebook here, or you can even click here to go back to your course home once you're done. So that's the basics of Gradebook that we're going to cover. I have a little bit of time left, so I'll just go into an assignment and show you where you can add a rubric. So here's the rubric that I added. If you haven't added a rubric, it will be at the bottom, and it will say Add Rubric at the bottom. So you can click on that and just create it, and then it's just like a plug-in jug. So you just can go in here and copy and paste. So if you have one in an Excel spreadsheet or in a Word document with columns, that kind of thing, that's where it works. You can have different amount of columns per criteria. But if you have anything set up where you have a criteria, rating system, and then a point system over here, it will work. So here's where you would say that you will want it to be used for grading. And you can say Update Rubric. And then it will give you a warning if it doesn't match up. So are there any questions about the rubric element, or, I mean, now that we're done with the whole thing, are there any questions about Gradebook in general, or rubrics, or SpeedGrader? Anything we went over? So the question is, how can you tell the gradebook to pick the top 5 scores out of 6 assignments and count them towards the total? So that's where excused might be a really useful thing to EX. So if you have like 5 assignments and you're requiring them to only pick 4, you could either like leave the dash where they haven't turned in any work and they won't get a 0 for that, or you can type in the EX. So that's how you would do that. You'd have to create all 6 assignments, because I'm guessing what you're talking about is that you have like 6 assignments and they can pick 5 out of the 6. They just would pick the 5 and tell them not to worry about whatever one they don't pick. And then, like I said, just either leave the dash or type in the EX, and it will just excuse them from that. Does that answer your question? There's also the curve grades and set a default grade too. Yeah, it definitely could be tedious. I mean, I think it's something that probably in the Canvas community people have complained about. So one nice thing about this Canvas community, see, you can type in so here, here's guides on it, and then sometimes they have these ideas where you click on it and it's someone's idea and it's complete, and then they say, this is what I want to do, and then they come in here and they say, yeah, so this is actually probably the idea where they come up with EX. Yeah, so someone like suggested it and they did it. So if you have any better way of doing it, or like ideas for how to excuse assignments, this is a good place to start. And sometimes if you can find ideas, you can vote them up. Like if you just log up here in the right hand, that's the best way to get things done through Canvas. So are there any more questions about the gradebook? So this is the question is, the rubric, is it catered to Canvas or can you import, and which is better? So you can't import, I mean, you can import a file, but it won't show up the way I showed you that this one shows up in SpeedGrader. The way to make the rubric interact with you, you have to do it yourself. I mean, it kind of is created by Canvas, but just to show you how it looks blank. So you see here this button at the bottom, you click that, and then it's like a fill-in box. So you'd go here, you'd fill in your description of a criteria. You can add in ratings. So I have found that most times, like I said, if you have a column setting or, in your Microsoft Word for your rubric, or if you're using Excel to do your rubrics, it does typically convert because you don't have to have all the same amount of ratings. Like if I add a criteria, see here I can have just 2 for the criteria. The only time I've ever seen it not work is if you use like a weighted rubric. It doesn't quite understand how to weight a rubric outside of assignment groups. And the other tricky thing is that you need to make sure your total points equal up to your assignment total points like you saw before, and to be sure to click this if you want to use it in SpeedGrader the way I was showing you, where you click on the different columns, to make it so that it fills out the grading automatically. And if you can then add comments to the different sections of your rubric. So like I said, it is in a way catered to Canvas, but like I said, in my experiment with it, it works, pretty well with just the issue is just taking the time to copy and paste, because that's what you have to do. You have to copy and paste your rubric into the Canvas version of a rubric. So just to show you the full one. Like I said, I just copy and pasted each section of this rubric. And that's how it looks there. So does that make sense? Does that answer your question? Okay, good. Well, like I said, after this, I'm going to send out a guide which has links out to these tutorials up here at the top, as well as a script. And then after this is done, I will share the recording with you through a link. And so you'll be able to access this later if you wanted to look at certain parts of how I did things. And again, I'm always available through email. You know my email, but it's slharlow@uncg.edu. So that's it for this session, and I will start advertising the next session soon.